Hello and welcome to Embedded. I'm Alicia White. My co-host is Christopher White. Our guest this week is Phoenix Perry, artist, musician, hacker, designer, engineer, and educator.
Hi, Phoenix. It's very nice to talk to you today.
Hello.
Could you introduce yourself as though you were on a panel at some embedded conference, embedded systems conference-like thing?
Sure. I am Phoenix Perry, and I run a nonprofit and make electronics and generally abuse electricity with healthy abandon.
All right. We're going to ask you more about many of those things. But let's start with Lightning Round, where we try to ask you short questions with short answers. And if we are behaving ourselves, we don't ask for great detailed explanations.
Okay.
We'll see how this goes. Chris, you want to start?
Preferred voltage.
120.
Favorite sensor?
That's a question you asked me, and all right. Favorite sensor. Oh, dear God. Well, I really love teaching people how to make sensors. So can I say the ones I make?
Yeah.
And we can get back to what those are.
Okay.
Ideal college class size.
20.
Favorite movie or book or any sort of fiction you have encountered for the first time in the last year?
I am a really big fan of Obelisk Gate, which is a book that I just read. It's a Afro-punk writer. I don't even know if you call her Afro-punk. She's definitely in the science fiction realm. At one point, I realized I was reading a commentary on race that was really profound, and it really hit me. And it's all set in this future fantasy sci-fi world. It's incredible.
Cool.
Oh,
yes. The Jemisin author. She's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I cannot wait for her next book. It's Afrofuturism is got to be some of the most interesting fiction out there right now. It's incredible.
Weirdest animal you've ever touched?
A yak.
All right.
That's a good one. Yeah. Let's see. Favorite actuator?
Oh, okay. This is I do haptics, so this is almost like a trick question. It's like asking me to choose who my favorite friend is. I really like Precision Microdrives. They have a whole range of actuators I'm a really big fan of. Right now, I can't remember the exact model number because everything just has numbers, but they have this little 3-volt actuator that creates really great vibration patterns through deep surfaces like wood. That's my favorite one right now. It's got a red casing.
Wow.
Right. I know that they made good ones, but I will ask you for the number after the show.
Yeah, definitely. I had them send me a bag. I called them and was like, hey, I make games. I want to test a bunch of your actuators. Do you have any discarded ones that I can just, they don't need to last more than 5 minutes, but I just want to see how they sound. And they sent me a bag. It was great. I paid them £12 for a bag of junk.
And that's $6 million.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of great because none of them meet the performance ramps that are their caliber for selling them. So they were off cast, and it was wonderful. It gave me a really good sense of size, and I was really after sound because my current game is about bees. So I wanted the actuators to sound bee-like through the wood.
All right, I was going to ask about the whole London and having an American accent, but now I just want to ask about bees. What is this game?
So right now I'm working with Heather Kelly, and she's a really amazing game designer. And for a long time, we've had a long distance game designer love affair because we are interested in all the same idiosyncratic things. And those things are interested, that kind of focus is how our senses can be augmented and enhanced in video games and how we can unlock different forms of perception in play. She and I decided to do something that really was a long time coming, but this Christmas we locked ourselves in an Airbnb in Chicago where neither of us live and we know very few people. And we spent 2 weeks digging through all of our interests to try and design a game. We came up with a game called Thrum, which is a set of hexagons. And inside each hexagon, right now there are 4 motors, but I think we're going to reduce it down to 1. And we're attempting to create like a board of them. So there's 7 right now. And we're attempting to vibrate them in directional ways so players can follow which food source we're trying to get them to collect. And it's based on bees and their waggle dance. So what they do when they find a bit of pollen is they come back and they do this little dance, and it kind of is all vibration based, and it's in the dark because there's no light in their hive, right? And they kind of rub up against the other bees next to them and they stomp around, and then they make a little offering of what they've discovered. And they attempt to get all the bees. They tell them the direction of the honey, the amount of the food source. They convey quite a lot of information through wiggling. So we're seeing if we can get humans to pathfind using vibration in a similar way.
So just to back up a second. No, it says it's going
There's
to be
just so many things to back up to.
But so
Sorry.
when people say video games or they hear games, now they think, PlayStation 4 and 3D graphics and shooting people.
Virtual reality.
And you're talking about physical artifacts, built things with actuators and sensors that aren't necessarily, computer games. I mean, they have computers, but that's not the main thing. Is
Absolutely.
that right? Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to get people to connect to each other and to play in groups in very social ways. My current game, Bot Party, is a game that rewards people holding hands in groups. So it reacts not to being touched. Like if you pick up one of the robots, they have accelerometers in them, so they kind of react. So people shake them, but they get really excited if you touch somebody. So that is really important to me, that human contact. And Thrum has everybody kind of playing. Eventually players, they start out on their feet, but very quickly they get on their hands and knees because they're trying to figure out what's going on. And I've seen them walk in a circle around it, and then I've seen them sit on it and lay on it and do all kinds of fun things. And that's not something that's going to happen in front of an Xbox controller. And you really unlock a kind of potential for engagement that is beyond the game itself.
Because you can engage with others.
Exactly.
And so when you say you're a game developer, is that... Actually, I'm not sure you said that. If someone were to say you were a game developer, this is the sort of game you mean, not a screen game.
Yeah. And a lot of people get really confused. Like my boss at work has struggled for a very long time because they asked me to teach like intro to games. And I just want to be like, these students don't deserve to have my hate. Because I just look at everything they make and I just want to be like, not a zombie survival game.
Professor Perry, when are we going to talk about Unity?
About what?
When are we going to talk about Unity, Professor Perry?
I know. And I'm like, let's talk about Bernie to Coven, and let's talk about like flow-based games. And they're like, no, we want to make zombie, horror, survival shooters. And I'm like, oh. So I feel really bad. I try and let them make them anyway. But I do encourage students to really reach outside the box. And I have had some spectacular examples of them picking that challenge up and doing really cool things with it. However, there are some students I have who really, and they're going to go on to be like the best of the AAA developers. I have one right now who he's super gifted, and I don't want to stop him. He's going to make some other 15-year-old boy really happy one day. But it's not me.
Okay, so it's not virtual reality. It's not a screen game. It's not an iOS game. Is there a name for this type of computer driven but not screen-based game?
Yes, there is beginning to be a name, which is really exciting. Years back, I did a game jam at NYU Poly called Alt Ctrl, and Make sponsored it, Native Fruit sponsored it, and I promoted it in the kind of places that hackers look. And I was really thrilled because the next year, I don't think they saw it because I don't think I really crossed into games as much, but it happened at NYU Game Innovation Lab, actually. Game Center wasn't open yet. And the next year there was an Alt Ctrl showcase at the GDC, which I thought was amazing. And it seems like Alt Ctrl is becoming the name for this stuff. And it really fits because it's alternative controllers, right? And so I think that's going to be the genre name that ultimately emerges.
Alt Control. Okay. But it's harder because you're not just writing software. You have to write the game software. You have to do all of the state machine and game flow.
Yes.
But now you also have to build hardware in a repeatable way.
I know.
I mean, that is the fun part, of course, but
it's also the bleeding part. And and the carrying the prototype. So I have two friends downstairs who also make physical games. And there's not a lot of us. It's a small community of people at this point. I would say if you packed us all in a room, you would safely have maybe 200 people. And the two people downstairs, we were talking about this, like every time we get a commission, there's almost no way that game survives from commission to commission. We always have to fix something. We always have to rebuild it because robust systems are hard and gamers are intense. They're not just going to touch your project and stroke it gently and be like, oh, soft little engineering project. They're going to slam it and they're going to take it to 11, like immediately. That was a real surprise when I first realized that the level of robustness was far greater than anything I had ever engineered before. I've seen people do things with knobs at video games festivals that it shocks the mind. And I think it's also like people changed how they approach a knob. I think when I was growing up, knobs had a bit more of a like precious like people would treat them a bit more preciously because they were attached to electronics. Now, like really young kids are used to iPads and they're used to like really, really rapid, quick responses. So they'll turn your knob up and down like 50 times in 2 seconds. Doesn't sound like a big deal. You stack that up over 2 weeks and you better make sure those wires inside are really firmly attached.
So this sounds a lot like doing
toy development for kids.
Well, I was going to say
exactly the same.
Yeah.
Museum concepts.
Oh,
because those get such intense usage from kids, really. Although I have been known to turn things very fast, and Christopher's ability to push buttons is always astounding.
That's button pushes I expect. The knob thing actually shocked me. I made a really cute little step sequencer game, and somebody dislodged one of the knobs. Like I had those things hot glued to acrylic. I don't even know how. But somehow when I opened it up, they had ripped the wires in the like tiny little like space. I was just like, how? How did you manage this? And I'm imagining a 3-year-old pulling it and jerking it. And I can see how it probably happened. But actually, chewing, actually, it could have totally been chewing because kids, right? And I have done that. Don't ever try and engineer in a lack of sleep state. I have done this, and I did that once at a game jam. It was gross. But I worked previously to my current condition where I live in Goldsmiths that should tell you how often I work, live in London, work at Goldsmiths. I was living in New York and I owned a game studio with Ben Johnson called Dozenize Games. And we made museum installations, and that taught me everything I know about robustness. I really changed how I approached making these games because some of the stuff we made for the museum had to be just really, there's no bugs. There are no bugs. And that's a very different kind of approach than, say, like prototyping.
It's a more manufactured production approach, even though you may only be doing 1 or 2. Of an instance. Yeah. You're going to cut a circuit board. You're going to weld the box shut. Like you're going to do that kind of thing. And unlike Maker Faire or festivals, you're not going to be standing there to fix it.
No, you're going to be 3,000 miles away, possibly, in my case. That can't go wrong.
Okay, other than robustness, what do we need to know about entering this field, just about making physical games to take places?
The biggest thing there's a couple things I would advise for like young designers. Think about suitcase size. You want to be able to travel with your game and you want to be able to take it to festivals to show it off. And that's a really great, fun way to shake hands and meet people and learn about the space. But you have to be able to pack your game down. So you really do need to think about modular design, and the CNC machine is your friend. The other thing I would say to consider is how you design and develop yourself a travel kit for your tools. So getting the right tools and getting the tools that you can travel with easily is really important. Like I have a USB-based soldering iron. I have a set of tools that's really light but strong because I put them in my bag all the time. I also have a pretty good understanding now of what the TSA will let through in hand luggage. And it's surprising that they will take a lot of things. I have had my USB soldering iron in my bag numerous times and they've never taken it out, which is actually really surprising. So stuff like that is really important. The other thing I would say is to plan to have your game ready to show a month before you show it. And play test it, because people are going to do really weird things with your hardware, and children are going to do extra weird things to your hardware. So running it on a large audience, like something you would experience at Maker Faire, is an excellent testing ground for a really successful game festival. So I was just at Now Play This. They had thousands of people through. It was sold out every day that they were there. So you sometimes have to be prepared for thousands of people playing your game. There needs to be really clear reset. There needs to be also ways for you to access it and check on it remotely. So one of the things I do is I have VPNs on all my machines. That way I can log on, I can look at them. If there's any, like it crashed out or my restart scripts, because you really want it to start and set itself up, launch. And if somebody pulls the power plug out of the wall, it reboots itself when it gets plugged back in. So you have to really think about all of these edge cases for disaster. So that would be my advice, my technical advice.
Well, actually getting down into the more technical pieces, what kind of sensors? I mean, haptics is very cool, and you mentioned accelerometers. What else are we looking at here? How?
Give us the whole architecture of a game.
Yes. In 5 minutes or less, please.
Well, okay. So there's totally. Downstairs right now, there are 3 hackers that make games, and it looks like an Adafruit store.
Okay.
If there's a brand new piece of hardware that comes out, we're on it like really quickly, because we are like, what are the potential for new game ideas that are novel that I've never seen? Like my friend Robin, who's here right now, Baumgard, I bought this piece of elastic conductive string, and I was like, oh, I'm going to make game with this. I'm going to make game with this. And I took it when I hung out with Heather in Chicago, and we couldn't think of anything to do with it. And I was like, this is going to be cool. Somebody's going to do something with this. Sure enough, like 2 weeks later, Robin made possibly the most adorable prototype ever, where when you stretched the string, there was a string on screen and you were trying to keep little characters from falling off of it. And they were adorable. And he did a one-to-one mapping of the string elasticity to the string on screen. And it was amazing. So these new technologies that get brought out by like Adafruit and SparkFun in an Arduino-friendly ecosystem really do make our jobs easier, because we don't have to think about, going to China and sourcing stuff. But we're on it really quick if we see something new, because it's going to open up new avenues for us to play with.
Well, that brings to mind, people often ask us, I want to learn X technology or I want to learn Y processor. And
That's
our
useless.
answer to that is always, you have to find a project you want to do. You can't just learn C for the fun of it. You should learn C so you can get to somewhere else.
Exactly.
And this physical game sounds like it's partially art. It's a performance art sort of thing, and yet it's also electronics and microcontrollers and software, and you put it all together and you build something that's far more than just a sensor.
Absolutely. And you're thinking like how your software can work and interact in the physical world. And C is really cool because you never just use one language with these kinds of games. That never happens. I'm usually rocking like 3 different languages, and sometimes I even have like a machine learning pipeline in there. I'm doing all kinds of trickery to make this stuff work. And often that trickery is where you learn like super interesting stuff. Like I got into machine learning for performance and gesture in games back in 2010 because I really needed a way for a camera to be able to recognize my movement. And motion tracking just sucks. It is not for me. It's just way too much static. I needed an easier way. And machine learning, I met this really amazing woman who I work with now at Goldsmith called Rebecca Febrink, and she and I started a collaboration. She was doing her PhD at the time, and she was trying to make machine learning accessible to people like me. And I just became her beta test. So it was really, really wonderful because I could take my sensor data, which is usually, let's just admit it, all electronics is basically signal massaging. I feel like often I'm trying to get a piece of data into like a usable format for something else. And she helped that process so much because I no longer really needed to care about what the data looked like. I just needed to care about what the output of it I wanted it to be and trying to get it clean enough that the neural network in between it could handle the noise. And that was really useful. Neural networks for sensor-based games, they're the jam. They're worth learning how to build yourself. And some of them you can get small enough, like the K nearest neighbor algorithm. You can get that small enough. You can run it on a teensy or something, which is really nice because then you're getting a kind of bit of machine learning in your sensor process for signal processing, and it's really nice. I highly encourage it.
You can run it on a teensy. You can't necessarily train it on a teensy.
Well, you could. It would just take a long time.
No, you're not going to train that, but you can run it. I made no claims about doing your training on the teensy. That sounds like just a disaster. You're going to want your data trained ahead of time. Yeah, exactly.
You earlier said that your favorite sensors were ones you built and ones you worked with your class. So what kind of sensors do you mean by that?
Well, right now, downstairs, I got in a fight with Bruce Sterling on the internet, which seems to happen more often than it should. And and he tweeted about this pair of yoga pants. Okay, come on. I'm just going to go ahead and say a $300 pair of smart yoga pants is ridiculous, right? It is possibly like the whitest thing you could buy. It is super privileged. I can't even look at it. But at the same time, I saw them and I thought to myself, yes, that is what I want. Machine learning embedded in my pants. And I just thought to myself, like, he was like, this is, he was kind of like downplaying and like making fun of them. And I was like, yeah, but they're onto the right idea. They're thinking in the right direction. They're thinking about how we could use gesture and motion in a natural and organic way and make our technology much more a part of our lives and less some sort of weird, disconnected screen experience. And he was like, well, I'll send you $3 if you tweet a picture of yourself in these for a 1% discount privilege. And I was like, I'm an engineer, yo. I don't have to. I can make that for $3. Don't even. So I was like, I think I'll just build my own just to be a jerk. So I've been building it this weekend with my friend Helen, and she is the CEO of DoItKits. So she's downstairs right now working on a sensor that we designed yesterday, which is a pressure sensor that also gives us XY stretch data. I don't know how it'll hold up in washing over time, but we've made it, like, of course, because, I'm ridiculous and from video games, on silver Lycra. And it looks like we basically made disco pants, but they do allow me to track motion, and they do allow me to track yoga poses that I could train into a, machine learning system, particularly with a neural network. I think it would do quite well with that. Anyway. You
said disco pants, but the picture I saw on Twitter really made me think of space yoga.
Space yoga.
Yes, space yoga.
See,
now this is going to turn into a game.
Yes.
I'm finding myself way on your side with this, and I know the initial reaction is a lot of people for these things is like Bruce's, where it's, oh, this is ridiculous. It's a 1%er thing, but it's also the first try at something, right? And okay, we have to get the silly rich people to buy this so we can get the next one, which is less expensive or does something more useful. And it's exactly what you're doing. You're seeing that and saying, well, that's overpriced and ridiculous, and I can do it for cheap. And that's exactly the way it should work, right? It's okay.
I think so.
That's a little bit of weird inspiration, but look what I can do with this now for a fraction of the price, and then things develop. I mean, if you don't start with the ridiculous thing, how do you ever get to practical?
Yeah, I mean, I might not be able to get there. Like, I think they're using this connective net fabric. But man, my postdoc at work, Perla Maiolino, I hope I'm saying Perla's last name right. She's amazing, and she designs skin for robots for ESA. She's awesome, and she invented a conductive stretchable Lycra. And I'm just like, I could use Perla's Lycra on this, And it's like, she makes amazing sensors. And that was immediately when I thought of the Lycra. She had shown me, she's Italian, and she has really good access to fashion industry folks. So she's done conductive material on one side, but then on the other side, she's made a nice black matte Lycra, if memory serves. And she's put them together as one piece of fabric, which is really cool. But anyway, what we're doing downstairs is kind of inspired on her idea. I just don't have it welded to a nice piece of Lycra. I have it I'm using iron-on fusing stuff for regular Lycra. So it's not as fancy, but it works. And then we've used a bit of Velastat. It's just the Velastat conductive fabric trick, right? It's not
pretend we don't know what that is.
Pretend that you don't know what that is. So Velastat is a piece of resistive material that changes resistance when you put pressure on it. And you can buy it from my favorite place to buy materials in the world, LessEMF. So LessEMF is this, they specialize in ghost hunting equipment, which is amazing. Yes, I'm not joking. Go to LessEMF.
Ghost hunting
is amazing. And but what they specialize in, actually, the ghost hunting insanity funds their materials research. So they have a ton of amazing conductive materials on their website. And I don't know if they're making some or sourcing some or making their ass. I'm not really sure what's going on over there. But every time I'm back home, I bring a bolt of their material back with me because they just have the most amazing material. So I got stretchable conductive Lycra there, and I also got Velastat. So the Velastat, I've cut a square of it. And basically, if you put it between two panels of conductive material, what you can do is if one is, attached to voltage and one is attached to ground, the resistance in between them will change when you press down on the Velastat, as long as you make the Velastat large enough that the two conductive pieces can't touch each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, it does. I'm still sketching in my head, but yes.
Yes, so it's two pieces of stretchable conductive Lycra with a piece of Velastat stuck in between. And I designed the leads of the Lycra to go into the seam of the pants. And then what I think I'm going to do is use silicone wire and sew it into the side of the pants for now. I think that'll be a nice little trick. And I really liked, they designed with like snaps. And my friend Marco and Heidi, they had this project called Xsense, I think. Xsense. They use snaps too to connect their sensors to their board. So I might sew on some snaps to snap the board on and off so you can wash them or do cool things with them. So I don't know. They'll be fun to make regardless. I'll probably, make them and do yoga with them a few times just to play with it, just for fun.
Yes.
And then maybe space game. I don't know. Anyway.
You have to choose the right yoga position in order to get to different areas of the game.
Oh my God, that's amazing. You have totally, this is so much better than the what was one of those big gurus who boomers really loved made a Connect yoga game that was really terrible. God, it's called Layla, I think. Deepak Chakra. Yes, such a crap game. Is so bad. But I could make this ridiculous and fun.
You mentioned DoItKits and Helen. And we haven't talked about what that is. So could you give us the, 10,000-foot view of what is DoItKits?
DoItKits is a set of learning materials that's designed for GCSE curriculum to allow teachers to teach STEM topics in much more tactile and meaningful and impactful ways. So there's a lot of research that supports that building something and doing something physically really does take the knowledge you've learned in something like a textbook and turn it into something applied in the real world. And it just connects the learning in a very solid and tangible way. Helen's been writing educational materials for years, and I've been engineering weird stuff for years. And Nat Hunter is a bit of a mad genius because we both applied for residencies at Machines Room, and she sat us right next to each other. And I think she knew what would happen. Because eventually these two things started to merge, and Helen started to make stuff with me, and I started to talk to Helen about how that could be, work. And she's really awesome and smart and gifted, and I love making weird stuff with her. But functionally now, Helen and Phoenix make stuff happens on weekends, and then Helen is smart enough to think about how to sell it so Phoenix can eat, and that's working out. So that is something that is, is going well. It's definitely nice to be connected to someone who not only knows how to market stuff, but really does have a strong passion for thinking about how physics education and math education cannot be so boring. And there's a lot of maker kits out there. There's a whole ton of products for the maker market. But what they fail to really understand is the teachers. And that the teachers, they don't necessarily know how to hack. And they don't necessarily have much desire to learn. They just want to be able to run their class. And they already, in large part, have a scripted set of curriculum that they have to accomplish. And Helen writes the lessons around those curriculum goals. And she makes the hacker projects easy enough that you can build without much technical skill. But the application of the science is still really in line with the educational system. Does that make sense?
Oh, the pedagogy is important, and you have to work inside the school curriculum because they don't have any time to play outside.
They really don't. And they're broke and stressed out, and teaching is hard. We've really come down. Every time I hear on the news, these ivory tower academics, I swear to God, I want to throw my sad $46,000 a year paycheck at somebody and be like, really? Where's my ivory tower? Where is it? Because I'm owed that. I want it.
Please let me back into the ivory tower, please. Do you have a favorite kit?
Oh, we have this really great kit going on right now. There are 3 kits. It's called the Science of Music or the Science of Sound. Science of Sound.
Is this the guitar one?
It is a guitar. It is a synthesizer.
Yes.
And it's a microphone. So you can have a band. It's really fun. So
It
the
was little
synthesizer.
tiny.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead. I should let you explain because I only saw the picture.
Yeah, it's because the flank of wood that's for the guitar isn't in the kit. So you have to have flanks of wood. That's the only thing. But you can kind of use any piece of wood, like really any piece of wood will do. But the synthesizer is a combination of Forrest Mim's classic 556 synthesizer with Nicholas Collins's little synthesizer from the first chapter where you make anything soundy with a synthesizer chip. My mind is drawing a blank. It's like the HC7401 or something. I've forgotten the number on it. But yeah, it's basically those two combined, and you make a little synthesizer. So it's ridiculous.
That sounds really fun.
It does, but how is it fitting into the curriculum?
Physics, oscillators,
yes.
waveforms, math. Right?
I mean, you could go really far with that. I mean, signal processing and much higher levels of math. But
exactly. GCSE is 12 years old, though. So they're going to get to what an oscillator. Also, British education is far more advanced. They get out of like their undergrad, like they get out of their high school experience with what our second level of college might be. They are doing physics at 12.
As they should be.
as we all should
agree.
be.
I know, right? I got physics my senior year. So that should tell you a little about the American education system. But yeah, so oscillators, right? And frequency and like absolutely the frequency that you tune the 556 synth to is all physics. So there's that.
No, and it leads to lots of other discussions that you could start pointing back to. Oh, if you want to know more about that, you can add this to this kit. It's a buildable thing. So I can see that. What other kits? Do you have another favorite kit, or is that one really kind of the darling right now?
Those are the ones I've worked on. So before that, Helen was doing her project. Absolutely. It's mostly hers, to be honest. I have an academic job, so I kind of just get to drop in and do cool stuff. She's really the hands-on when they're doing all the work. But she has a kit called Time to React, which is all about reaction time. She would have to tell you more about that because I haven't read the education book for it yet. But it's all about like reaction times in the human body, and it's a button that you hit, and it gives you the time it took you to react. So I think that's what it does.
That makes sense, and I can see making that more technical. All right, let's go on then. There was something else, the Code Liberation Foundation, which is sounds so militaristic.
Yes, I started my own anti-army. I did. Absolutely. Went recruiting. So video games. How deep do you guys want to go in this topic?
Deep as you want.
So video games can be rather hostile to women and non-binary and queer identifying souls. It can not necessarily be the safest or most welcoming environment, not only on the development side, but on the player side, which is ironic given 52% of people who play games are women. But a lot of those women play the kind of games that guys don't think are real games. I definitely fall in that category.
I still play threes.
High fives. That's awesome. Yes, I agree. Threes is rad. But see, somebody from like the gaming scene would be like, that's not a real game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does not shoot anything.
You don't allow me to shout profanity at you while you play.
No. And I really always thought the reason I wasn't included in games was because I was weird. And I'm used to people not including me in spaces because I'm weird. And I never ever for even a minute thought it was because I was a girl. And that maybe the kinds of games that I liked just weren't being supported in the way they should be. And I made PlayStation made an amazing miscalculation and asked me to make a prototype for the Vita, which they really loved. And I ended up going to the GDC and E3, and they used it to show off their new console when the Vita came out. And I found myself front and center in a really serious, like, you don't get more serious than like the middle of the PlayStation booth on the GDC floor. Like, that's games with a capital G. And I have never been treated so badly in my professional career. I got programming quizzes. I had men walk up to me and ask me who had made my game. Like, it was just a litany of insanity. I was like, what is wrong with these? What is wrong with these people? Did they think somebody else made this? Like, and I'm just like a little bit naive and totally confused. And I'd never been to the GDC before because I was an outsider. And so I thought, okay, now my shift is over. I'm going to put my game down and go have a little break and walk around the convention. I thought Comic-Con was bad. Holy Jesus, I was not prepared for this. My jaw was on the floor at like the number of booth babes and women in latex rolling around on the floor with like dragon images behind them. Just super uncool, like not cool. And later that night, I went to a indie party by a developer named Notch, and he made a game called Minecraft. And
I've heard of that game. I hear it's really, really super, super popular.
Yeah, it is.
Played by a lot of 13-year-old boys.
It is. And so
and girls and older and girls.
Yes. I only went because, my friends were going and Skrillex was playing, and there was supposedly free booze in the VIP access room we had access to. So I was like, fine, I'll go to this. And I went in, and it was all the men who were like winning the awards and getting all the attention, and who were at all these game companies, like in really serious roles, like all the Sony people, all the Xbox people, all the capital G games people that my students hope to be one day. And Notch swears he didn't hire them, and it was the club. But I don't care who hired them. There were women who were working in that room. And by working, I mean their skirts barely covered their bodies in a way that was appropriate. I think that they would have probably been stopped on the street. Some of them didn't have, you could basically see pretty much most of their boobs. Mesh clear net shirts, like that whole kind of thing. And it was super awkward. And I was like, okay, this space is just hella toxic. I have never been basically taken to a convention and had this experience. And I met a bunch of really cool women at that conference, and all of them felt really similar to me. So when I got back, I asked them, I had them over for pizza. It was Nina Freeman, Jane Friedhoff, and Catt Small, who are all three amazing. Catt's games right now are blowing up. She's doing amazing work with diversity in games. And I really love all of their projects. And I was like, hey, do you all want to change this with me? And they were like, yes. I'm like, let's teach people how to be devs for free. Let's find other women and let's teach them how to program for free. And we really quickly started coming up with curriculum and ideas and approaches and pedagogy. And we ran our very first class at NYU Game Center in the summer in New York, which is really, really hot. 86 women showed up to learn C++ in July. I was just like, holy crap, the demand here is huge. And not only did women want to make games, they had just been looking for any reason to have a group of friends to make them with. So Code Liberation in New York was wildly popular. We taught a couple thousand women over a span of years. So like at my count, when I moved out of New York, it was around 2000. They have continued to run that chapter without me. Catt was the executive director for a couple of years, putting in like a lot of hard work. Now Adele Lynn is doing it in a kind of informal capacity. And they have a whole rank like Carolyn Sanders and a whole bunch of just really amazing women doing amazing work. We just ran a hackathon with the Girl Scouts and the which was really cool. And they made 3D statues for women that had been left out of historical locations around New York. It was kind of similar to the Hidden Figures app, just more. And it was great. They had a good time learning the 3D model together. And yeah, and so in London, I started a chapter here, and we've been working on slowly building a really grassroots community. I've gone much slower in London because I am formally employed and I do work full time, and I do DoItKits, and I hack, and I make my own work. And I'm doing a PhD in haptics and sound. So I'm pretty overwhelmed, but we have a nice chapter. It's got about 20 some members in it. We ran one really successful workshop with the VNA, and we exhibited in parallel worlds in the Lates, which was really cool. And there were 16 brand new games that were made from our first cohort. We're about to run our second cohort. It starts in July. It goes all the way through September. It's like a long 7-part class with an exhibition in London Design Week at the end of it at the VNA. And I'm really excited about it. So yeah, that's me attempting to change the world, yo. It's gone pretty well. It's been pretty crazy. This year, Nina went from it was amazing. One of the best things that happened is 3 years in, three years later, from that party where Nina and I were both at that Notch party, to just being completely unknown. Now she gave the awards at the GDC last year. I just wanted to high five her 1,000 times. So I feel like we've done it. I feel like we've really made massive change. So that's that.
I really, really like this story. We don't often cover women in tech things on the show because you can whine about it or you can do something about it. And you can't always do both. And I'm so happy that, yeah, okay, it's a problem. Let's do something. Let's fix this.
Yeah, I'm a fixer by nature. So, yeah. I really didn't think I was going to be doing something quite so revolutionary. Had you told me that I was going to end up on Al Jazeera and Caroline was going to end up on MSNBC and Nina was going to be giving the awards out at the GDC 3 years later, I would have thought you were crazy. But it happened. And life.
If somebody wants to know more about this upcoming in London VNA, that's Victoria and Albert, the museum, right?
Yep.
Okay. How do they find out more information about it?
Codeliberation.org.
All right. That will, of course, be in the show notes.
Yes. Click on the blog. I need to put the link, the application up on the homepage still because I've been busy hacking sensors and I apologize for that.
Those yoga pants, they're very engrossing.
They are. I was supposed to put this on the internet, but you got to just be a bit. Bruce Sterling offered to give me £6 now. So
I think you should keep talking him up.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Maybe I can get him up to a whole.
He's good for it.
He is. I'm just going to send him a link to my nonprofit and be like, so your donation will be generously accepted.
It's tax deductible.
See if you can rope William Gibson in with him.
Yes. See if I can get the whole Monty crew of 90s science fiction writers involved.
I don't want to keep you because I know that you have a house full of amazing people, and now I want to talk to you after about getting them on the show. But Chris, do you have anything you want to ask? I have so many things, but what else should we cover? Don't be so interesting. Sorry. Don't ever apologize for that.
I guess, one thing that comes to my mind is a lot of the people who listen to the show and who are on the show, they make electronics, they work with Adafruit boards like you're talking about, and they make things out of electronics, predominantly electronics. What I don't know is that there's an easily visible path to learn about the other stuff, the fabrication, the inspiration, like the wearable stuff that you're talking about. I don't know where I would start if I'm like, oh, I want to do something, but I don't know anything about that world.
Yeah. I mean, the fabrication stuff is harder. I fought for years to have laser cutter access, years. That was a struggle. And when NYC Resistor finally got one, I was ready to cry tears of joy. And then now 3D printing is pretty accessible. You don't have to build one by yourself. That's pretty rad. So you can kind of find that stuff. But the CNC stuff is still relatively rare. You have to join a hackerspace and take a class. There's really no other way around it because those machines can actually kill you. The other thing that I think is cool is like Fusion360 is a really nice intro starting point. And Autodesk has really tried to include our community in a way that I think is working, although their purchase of Eagle has me ready to vomit in a bag, because if they screw that up, I'm going to cry, because KiCad is really hard to teach to new people. And I really just don't want to have to try again every time. That the process of making a board in KiCad is just so much longer than it is in Eagle for new kids. It takes... I can do Eagle in half an hour. It takes a week for KiCad. And KiCad, I think, is arguably more powerful. But, Autodesk is, let's hope. Autodesk, if you're out there listening, do not make that totally obnoxious. Keep the good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think makerspaces, join a makerspace, join a hackerspace. NYC Resistor in New York is awesome. I love that place. That they have a shopbot. Also, there's just like more of that now. Machines Room in London has one. There's a ton in Holland and Belgium that are really cool. That's what I know of so far. And then also for the fabrication stuff that's beyond that, the wearable stuff, Lynn Burning, I think that's her last name. She has the best resources on the internet, and they're really undersubscribed. I like to consider her the much shyer, much more technical Becky Stearns. Because she goes much deeper than Becky does in a lot of her tutorials. And she really has a huge breadth. Also, there's the woman who makes How to Get What You Want. I forget her URL because it's kind of weird, but I'll send you a link. And the front of her site just says How to Get What You Want, and is a just ridiculously, tremendously useful crafter hacker wearable site. I don't think there's like a better resource online. So that's my advice there. And also LessEMF. Google that.
I just started looking at that site, and
yes, it's amazing.
They're very serious, and I don't, but they're bonkers. There's some bonkers stuff on there.
Yes, but the fabrics rock.
I'm looking at the Faraday canopy for your bed now.
Okay, who doesn't need a Faraday canopy for the bed?
Who doesn't?
I always tell people if they come over and my house is totally silver, I've really lost the plot on LessEMF. But man, they sell this stuff super cheap. So like the bare conductive paint that you can pick up here in London is probably a bit higher caliber. But for like a little jar, it's like 18 pounds or something. Yeah. It might be cheaper now. But you can get a gallon of that stuff for LessEMF for $50.
I found the ghost hunting section.
Oh.
Wow. They have party kits. Ghost hunting party kit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I know. But conductive materials, because they got to keep the ghosts out.
All right,
you two. Both of you. Wow. So many interesting things to talk about. And yes, we should do this again sometime.
Yeah, totally.
I never got to ask you, what are you teaching this year? And
oh my God, can I plug? I want to plug something. I want to plug something.
Go.
I wrote a master's. I made a master's. I made a master's degree for people who want to make weird, playable physical games.
Awesome.
And VR and like theater and like immersive spaces and escape rooms. It's going to be at Goldsmith. It starts this fall. It's called Independent Games and Playable Experience Design. Join me. We are still taking applications, and I am super excited.
You should be. That would be totally cool.
I want to sign up for it.
I know.
Except I'm all old and crotchety now.
And far from London.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. Well, I'm old and crotchety, but I still managed to have a lot of fun.
Phoenix, do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, my God. Indict the president.
That's not our normal genre, but okay, go ahead.
Please get that man out of office so I can come home one day. America, you want me back?
Our guest has been Phoenix Perry, lecturer at Goldsmith, University of London. CTO of DoItKits and founder of Code Liberation Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us, Phoenix.
Awesome. Thank you. This was fun.
And thank you to Christopher for producing and co-hosting. And of course, thank you for listening. Our quote this week comes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out, but when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within. Embedded is an independently produced radio show that focuses on the many aspects of engineering. It is a production of Logical Elegance, an embedded software consulting company in California. If there are advertisements in the show, we did not put them there and do not receive money from them. At this time, our sponsors are Logical Elegance and listeners like you.